And can we talk a little bit about, your backstory? Because we're making kind of some allusions to it, but I'd love it if you could talk about it. So you're born in Coventry, or right around there. And at some point, it looked like you were going to have just kind of another typical life there. And you were really suffering from some depression, which led kind of to anger and then to looking into your fears. And maybe we can just talk a little bit about that, just to kind of set the scene of, who Geoff Thompson was back then. I mean, what were some of those things that kind of tripped into that evolution?
I was wanting to expand outside of the periphery of my small life. But every time I got to the periphery of it, every time I got to the edges, every time I tried to expand the borders, I was turned away by fear, by terror. I didn't realise that I had to consume that, I had to absorb that, I had to go through that. They call it the fire and thorns around the kingdom. I had to go through that, but every time I met it, I kept turning back inwards. So I had this massive creative urge, but nowhere to place it. I was suffering with periodic depression, which would literally wipe me out. It would leave me feeling terrified. And this, again, I had a young family and I was working. So
this 20s, mid-20s?
Yeah, my mid-20s.
Okay.
I was a second
Just another bloke in Coventry,
another guy
who's also
in a factory.
Okay, in a factory, but also severely depressed, not knowing what to do with it, and not having anybody to talk to about it, and not having a book like yours to read about it, because no one had written anything like that before.
There was nothing that I could find
that you could relate to.
No, there's nothing there at all. Then it just something happened. I would say this was my first communication with my soul. One day I was in the pits of depression. I just found this anger and I just thought, I'm not having this anymore. I'm not having it. I'm not putting up with this anymore. So I just decided, I just had this idea to write down everything I was afraid of and systematically confront it one by one. I drew a pyramid on a piece of paper. Again, the idea just dropped into my head like a coin falling through water. I wrote my least fear on the bottom step, my worst fear on the top step, and I systematically started to confront these fears. I started to intercourse with them. I started to call them out. And one by one, as I overcame these fears, I developed desensitization to the biology, the adrenaline. I reclaimed parts of myself. So the part where all the fears were residing, there were places they were squatters. So when I got rid of these fears, I would confront a fear and keep confronting it until the fear dissipated. So the nature of the fear would be liberated and the effulgence, the energy that was in the fear, would come back to me. So I'd reclaim these little parts. As I started to climb the pyramid, I recognised that the fears I'd written down, spiders, fear of dentists, were kind of placeholders. They were covering deeper fears. So I was afraid of my wife. I was afraid of confrontation with my wife. I was afraid of my mother. I was afraid of any kind of confrontation. I was afraid of change.